Tonight on Primetime, Russia describes Azerbaijan as an important partner in the South Caucasus as the foreign ministers of both countries meet in Moscow. Could this be a new chapter in Russia-Azerbaijan relations? Good evening. Azerbaijan's Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov is visiting Russia for talks with his counterpart in Moscow. Now, ahead of the visit, Russia's Foreign Ministry, well, they say relations with Azerbaijan are based on the principles of equality and mutual respect. As part of the visit, Mr. Bayramov is scheduled to hold a bilateral meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Friday. Okay, we're going to take a very brief break now. We'll be back in just a couple of moments' time. Don't go away.
And Azerbaijan and is a really strategic player in this region for stability, for peace. There is an offer from Azerbaijan to deliver gas to the Middle Europe.
Slovakia helped to build more closer, more constructive relations between Baku and Brussels.
Azerbaijan we see like one of the key players.
A warm welcome back to Primetime wherever you're watching. So with both foreign ministers then meeting in Moscow, what does all this mean for Azerbaijan-Russia relations? Well, to explore that, I'm joined now by our very own Anastasia Lavrina. Anastasia, good to see you in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Give us a sense then of the key issues likely to be dominating these talks, and what outcomes do you think we can expect?
Well, guys, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for this question. But I would like to come back a little bit to the recently held fourth Shusha Global Media Forum, specifically on the statement made by the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, His Excellency Ilham Aliyev, when he responded to the question of Russian journalists on the bilateral relations between Moscow and Baku, where he stated that we, of course, appreciate the relations with Russia and the challenges behind us, the relations are fully normalized. I guess that was a signal, a good message, yes, that after the difficulties we faced due to some challenges we experienced, I guess we have to remember those incidents which happened. I mean, the crash of the Azerbaijani airlines in Aktau. Russia actually finally took the responsibility for that. And then later on, the incident which happened in Yekaterinburg. Of course, all of these affected the bilateral relations, but as the head of the state mentioned, at the moment the relations are fully normalized. But before coming to your question, I would like to say that the region has completely changed. And as the head of the state mentioned in his answer, he said that the South Caucasus is not the same as it was, let's say, 5 years ago. And I guess the reality that Russia has to understand and accept this. So from this bilateral meeting, which will take place tomorrow between the heads of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Azerbaijan and Russia, probably we have to highlight three key directions. The first is that regional security will be one of the key elements of the discussion, as Russia already expressed the willingness to see the peaceful development of the relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. We we all hope that there is a clear understanding in Russia and in Russian, specifically Russian expert community, that what we see today is the bilateral talks between two republics in the region of the South Caucasus, between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And through these bilateral discussions, two countries have already achieved too much. So for the future, the dialogue will be more efficient than the intervention from outside. So this is a clear stance, clear position of Azerbaijan, and I guess there is a clear understanding of this among the Russian community as well, at least through the in the Russian establishment, in the Russian government. So the question of security and the processes between Azerbaijan and Armenia probably to be a number one issue to be discussed tomorrow. Then of course it's border delimitations and the opening of the transport links in the region. As I guess you were also there at the forum, you attended that important meeting with His Excellency President, and the same journalist from Russia also asked about 3+3 platform, where the President responded that yes, we worked on that, that's a good initiative, but not exactly 3+3, but probably more about 3+2, as Georgia is still not clear about its position and participation. So transport link, reopening, coordination and cooperation in between of the countries in the region. So probably that will be number two topic for discussion. And the third, I support the trade and energy links, probably north-south corridor, which is also among the interests of the Russian Federation. In discussion, probably there will be touched some aspects related to the energy and trade links in the region. But the most realistic outcome of this meeting is not a breakthrough of the relations between Russia and Azerbaijan, but stabilizing relations and preserving the practical cooperation for the future.
Let's just go back to what you said about the Azerbaijan-Armenia, the ongoing peace process, Anastasia, because there was a press release, wasn't there, from Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs just before the visit, and in it Moscow expressed a willingness to help mediate, I think. It may have been a slightly different phrasing, but that was the sense, I think, of the message. Of course, the peace has already been won, as we've just mentioned. Do you think that this involvement is a good thing, or do you think potentially, if it's not done in the right way, it could hinder more than it could help?
Any involvement is not welcomed in the region of the South Caucasus at the moment. As I already stated before, Azerbaijan is not the same country as it was 5 or 6 years ago. Specifically, I'm talking about the period after the end of the Second Karabakh War or 44 Days Patriotic War. Azerbaijan today is a completely different country. It's developed, it's prosperous, it's investing and working a lot on the restoration process in the liberated Karabakh, and it's working on the development of the mutually beneficial relations with all countries in the region and far beyond. So we are following our national interests, and as the head of the government, also the head of the country, stated at this forum, for Shusha Global Media Forum, we will not allow the intervention from outside and the usage of Azerbaijani territory or Azerbaijani interests against any third country. So Azerbaijan is indeed very strong and independent country that is deciding its own on how to develop its foreign policy. And you're absolutely right, both Azerbaijan and Armenia have achieved a lot on the bilateral base through their bilateral discussions. So if the question is, do we need mediators from outside? No, we don't need it. Russia, of course, remains an influential regional actor with political, economic and security ties, specifically with Armenia. However, we have to confirm and let's say highlight this, that it's not longer has exclusive leverage over the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. There is an interest of the European Union, of the United States. We do see their active engagement into the processes of the region. United States itself, specifically after 8th of August last year, when the trilateral meeting was held in Washington, D.C., we see that Donald Trump put a lot of efforts. And by the way, today Donald Trump also made a post in his X account where he also praised what President Aliyev told about him.
Yes.
As a president of peace, how United States, indeed specifically Donald Trump, contributed a lot to the peace promotion between two countries in the region, and overall, as Donald Trump mentioned many times, he helped to resolve 8 conflicts, if I'm not mistaken. He mentioned it many times, and the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan also published the response to that, thanking the American leader for such an approach to the situation. So we see the growing role of the United States, the interest of the United States in the region of the South Caucasus, and I guess Russia should understand this, that it lost its monopoly in the region of the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan, of course, supports good relations, pragmatic relations, mutually beneficial and mutually respected relations. If Russia also define the same approach to the relations with Azerbaijan based on mutual respect, and also accept that Azerbaijan is an independent country which has all the rights to form its own domestic and foreign policy, then I don't think there will be any difficulties for the pragmatic development and strengthening even the economic, energy and other different ties between Russia and Azerbaijan. But in Moscow there should be the clear understanding about this particular aspect, and of course about the process between Yerevan and Baku. For Russia, they should be also understanding that in case two countries need Russian involvement into the process, Russia will be informed about that.
Talking of Russian involvement, Anastasia, one theme we've been tracking heavily on this show, I know you've also been tracking on your show Inside Politics, is Russia's view of the relationship between Armenia and the EU. Where is that view at this point, and do you expect this to feature in the meeting?
The key difference between Azerbaijan and Armenia in the region is that Azerbaijan is strong enough, it's independent enough to have this multi-vectoral diplomacy and having, let's say, stable relations with both with Russia, with the European Union, with the United States. When we speak, it's more about multi-vectoral foreign policy, what I mean. When we speak about Armenia, it's not strong enough to have independent policy, whether it's with the Russian Federation, with the European Union, with the United States, with the United Kingdom and many other aspects. Of course, the Russian influence in Armenia is still too high from the energy perspective, economic perspective, and specifically for Russia, it's, let's say, it's very unusual to see how Armenia is willing to have more independent policy, as for decades it was Russia who prevailed in all of the decision-making processes, had its own intervention into the election process, having its own strong lobby in Armenia, and of course Armenian lobby in Russian Federation. And today, when new government, the government of Nikol Pashinyan, is willing to have more diversified policy, more independent from Russia policy, for Russia first it seems unacceptable. Still, Armenia is a member of Eurasian Integration Union. Yes, it's, let's say, frozen participation in the CSTO, but it's still a member of this organization. And there were many statements against the government of Nikol Pashinyan from Russia, where they had to influence, try to affect the decision-making process. But let's say, still, as for today, after the recent visit of Ursula von der Leyen to both Armenia and Azerbaijan, we could see that yes, there is a still perspective for Armenian integration into the European Union. But if I'm not mistaken, a couple of days after this visit, Nikol Pashinyan traveled to Russia, where he met with Mikhail Mishustin. It was not the Russian president, but still it was a government official, where two of them confirmed the willingness to let's say, bypass the difficulties two countries has, but they didn't ignore the fact that the difficulties are still there. So yes, Armenian position is much weaker than Azerbaijani, and as I already mentioned many times, the future of this country will depend more on the regional integration processes rather than its pro-European or pro-Russian policy stance.
Anastasia, always great to get your analysis, particularly when you come in and join us live in the studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, coming up, we'll take a closer look at the developing situation in Ukraine, where public outcry has followed the dismissal of the country's defence minister. Don't go away.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back to Primetime. Good to have you with us this evening. Keir Starmer is using his final visit to Kyiv as Prime Minister to reaffirm Britain's long-term support for Ukraine and unveil a new air defence package. Zainab Farizada reports.
Keir Starmer is making his final visit to Ukraine as Prime Minister, arriving in Kyiv on Thursday to mark the culmination of 2 years of his leadership in supporting Ukraine. Today also marks Sir Keir's final day as Labour leader, and de Bonham is due to be declared the party's new leader on Friday before travelling to Buckingham Palace on Monday, where he is expected to be invited by the King to form a government. During a joint press conference with President Volodymyr Zelensky, Starmer reaffirmed that the UK's cast-iron support for Ukraine would always endure. He announced a further €300 million support package alongside Sweden to provide 16 advanced aircraft to strengthen Ukraine's air defences. British PM said the mood is shifting, arguing that Vladimir Putin is now being forced to admit the invasion is creating real problems inside Russia. He said now was a time to increase pressure on Moscow, adding that Ukraine had helped preserve European security and was one of the world's most battle-hardened and technologically advanced military forces. President Zelensky said he was afraid of changes in leadership among Ukraine's allies, but hoped the close relationship between Kyiv and London would continue under the next Prime Minister. He also awarded Sir Keir the Order of Freedom, Ukraine's highest honour for a foreign national. During his time in office, the UK has remained one of Ukraine's closest allies, providing military assistance, training for Ukraine troops and financial support. Sir Keir also oversaw the signing of a 100-year partnership between the UK and Ukraine, aimed at strengthening defence, trade and long-term cooperation. Zainab Farizada, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Staying with Ukraine, and at least 3 people have been killed after a Russian-guided bomb attack on Zaporizhia. It comes as Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky dismissed the country's defence minister, triggering public outcry.
A major political shake-up in Kyiv as Ukraine's parliament approves a sweeping government overhaul during a critical phase of the war. Lawmakers voted overwhelmingly to appoint former state energy executive Sergei Koretsky as the country's new prime minister, along with his core cabinet of ministers. However, the crucial portfolios of foreign affairs and defence have been left vacant, with Parliament set to vote on those key security posts separately at a later date. With a challenging winter on the horizon, the new premier took the podium, warning that energy security and national survival remain urgent priorities.
I am fully aware that this winter may be even more difficult, so we must stand united and be resolute.
But behind the legislative unity lies a deepening rift within Ukraine's military leadership. The dismissal of highly popular defense minister Mikhailo Fedorov has triggered public protests in Kyiv. The 35-year-old tech expert, credited with transforming Ukraine's drone warfare and striking Russia's oil infrastructure, has exposed a severe conflict at the very top. Holding a scathing press conference, Fedorov confirmed he rejected President Volodymyr Zelensky's offer to remain in the team as an advisor. Instead, he launched a direct attack on Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky, accusing the general of blocking reform, refusing direct communication, and fracturing national unity.
Zelensky proposed to become an advisor. I refused. Today we need to talk like adults. Instead of figuring out how to defeat Russia asymmetrically, the commander-in-chief has figured out how to split the country where we find ourselves today.
With Zelensky set to nominate Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko to take over the defense portfolio, critics warn that replacing Fedorov at this stage could compromise drone development and deep strike initiatives at a critical time on the battlefield.
Well, joining me now to discuss the situation on the ground in Ukraine is senior editor at Issue Insight, John Kavalik. John, great to have you as always on the show. A lot going on here, isn't there? Mr. Fedorov, widely credited with driving Ukraine's military innovation. He's a young man, he's a technically astute individual. Why sack such a prominent figure at this point in the war?
It's so surprising because you go back to where President Zelensky was before he became president. He was a producer and he was an actor in a comedy show. So he knows about production, he knows about casting, and he knows about ratings. And most importantly, he knows that you want to keep your audience and don't do anything to have them go from your program to someone else's during a commercial break. This is what sort of he's done today, which is take someone who's young, popular, and credible and push him aside for, in essence, take the view of someone who's almost twice Fedorov's age. And for the first time, the people in Ukraine, they're feeling good, but this just seemed unnecessary. And you add everything going on in the Zelensky administration. There are more and more corruption allegations and then actual corruption investigations that lead to imprisonments and fines. And then you have what's been happening in terms of the government moving people around, issues with the RADA, issues with transparency. And it just seems, that self-inflicted wound.
John, one of the amazing byproducts of this war has been Ukraine's military prowess, particularly in high-tech drone technology. Ukraine's military modernization efforts, I guess to some degree, have been led and pioneered by this individual. What sort of effect is this decision going to have on Ukraine's ability to continue to be admired around the world for that sort of technology?
I go back again to, President Zelensky's television background, and that, he knows that everything is about optics. And as President Trump well knows, it's about optics. And this just doesn't make a lot of sense because you're sort of decapitating that generation, and this entire scenario of the last basically week has reminded me of John F. Kennedy. When John F. Kennedy came in, he brought in what was called the best and the brightest. They were young technocrats, corporate folks, but they were all young and dynamic. And that's what, over time, Zelensky's cabinet was much older when the war started. It's gotten basically younger and younger and younger. And now he does this, and there just doesn't seem to be a lot of validation as to why it needed to be done now, particularly when the relationship between Ukraine is fragile in terms of NATO and the European Union. The next 24 months are going to be very difficult for Ukraine as members of the EU, members of NATO deal with financing issues, deal with election issues. We've already, Keir Starmer, this is his last trip. Emmanuel Macron of France, he's going to be out next year. There's going to be a lot of changes. So it's really questionable why he would do this now and then not have it all locked up. And we have a new prime minister, but we don't have two very important positions confirmed at the same time. So the packaging is really important. And again, I sort of go back to President Zelensky and the television. it's about packaging, it's about casting, and you have everything ready to go. And what he's doing by, well, we've got a prime minister, we're still uncertain about a foreign minister, we're still uncertain about a defense minister, but maybe we've got one. It's sort of like he thinks that teasing somehow makes the show more interesting. It doesn't. The audience gets disgusted.
John, no politicians like U-turns, but we have seen public pressure influence the government and the decisions they make before. I mean, do you think that these demonstrations might just actually work?
Well, Fyodorov just sort of shut the door on that when he, announced that President Zelensky wanted to keep him in the tent as an advisor, and he said no. So I don't think, we have that option to look for now. It's going to be, President Zelensky trying to maintain a belief that he's competent. They are gearing up for what may be his reelection campaign, but they're definitely gearing up. They're doing a lot of, the typical mudslinging where they're trying to tarnish people that may run, and he's showing he's showing age. He's showing that he's aging into a role where, because of martial law, the presidency doesn't have a lot of guardrails. And his people, Andrei Yermak, the chief of staff who left not too long ago, they sort of have this omnipotence to them. And you pointed out, Ukraine is, over time, has had some remarkable achievements in terms of military technologies and delivering those technologies into Russia. Ironically, though, had Russia not continued the war, Ukraine likely wouldn't have developed those capacities and capabilities because there would have been no need to. So Russia has sort of helped Ukraine become this behemoth in terms of electronic warfare, but Ukraine still depends on its friends for money, and you still have that asymmetric part of it, which is Ukraine is bringing pain to the Russian people, bringing pain to the Russian government, hitting infrastructure, but Russia's responding by hitting schools and hitting apartments and killing men, women, and children. And that asymmetrical behavior of each side is going to continue for a while.
John, you've mentioned the utility of youth, the importance of optics. What does the next Defence Secretary need to look like, to be? What are the qualities that you think are essential?
This is where, President Trump's modus operandi comes in. President Trump, how often have we watched him sit with someone, good-looking guy, big, good-looking guy, tough guy, out of central casting? Fedorov was out of central casting. He was young, dynamic, could relate to Ukrainian population, could relate to the young people as Ukraine was digitalizing everything else in the economy. He could communicate well. He was liked by the NATO members that dealt with him. He was liked by the public. He was approachable. He could speak their language. And so it's okay. Then what was so wrong with him? Well, he couldn't get along with the commander. Civilian control over the military is always tenuous. It's always fraught with tension. Ukraine's in a war, a little different model. But I still think that the challenge is going to be explaining all of this. And I don't know. Young people Ukrainian people are going to adapt to this because there's just too much overwhelming them. So they went out and protested. That was unusual. And you see Sumy, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, the frontline cities where people are unhappy because they felt in some respects that Fedorov had their back and that he was really trying to end the war. And now they're not so certain because there's all the the corruption that's going on, a lot of it military, and there's just President Zelensky may be counting on the people to support him just a little too much, because he's beginning to seem as though he's in campaign mode and also omnipotent mode. I can do what I want, and you all are just going to accept it.
Fascinating analysis, as always, John. We thank you very, very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us.
And Azerbaijan, and is a really strategic player in this region for stability, for peace. There is an offer from Azerbaijan to deliver gas to the Middle Europe.
Can Slovakia help to build more closer, more constructive relations between Baku and Brussels?
Azerbaijan we see like one of the key players.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Turkey is renewing its push for Russia-Ukraine peace talks with Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Kyiv to discuss mediation, Black Sea security and future guarantees. Adam Morrow reports now from Istanbul.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is in Kiev for high-level talks aimed at reviving diplomatic efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war, while strengthening bilateral ties and security cooperation. Fidan has held talks with his Ukrainian counterpart, Andrei Sybiha, with the two ministers discussing the stalled peace process, Black Sea security, and Turkey's continuing role as a potential mediator between Moscow and Kiev. Speaking at a joint press conference, Fidan called for the continuation of the Turkey-mediated Istanbul negotiation process, and said Ankara would continue its diplomatic efforts to bring the two sides back to the negotiating table.
Frankly, we do not want the war to spread to the Black Sea. It is essential to preserve peace in the Black Sea. Targeting ports, tankers and fishing boats there and putting civilians' lives at risk is not something that can be excused. In this regard, we once again emphasize here that all parties must act with common sense and responsibility.
Sybiha, for his part, said Turkey could serve as a venue for a potential meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Kiev says it remains ready for a ceasefire and believes direct talks at the leaders' level could provide fresh momentum towards ending the conflict. Fidan's visit comes as Turkey seeks to build on its unique position as a NATO member that maintains working relations with both Ukraine and Russia. Ankara has hosted several rounds of direct negotiations between the two sides and helped broker the Black Sea grain deal, while continuing to voice support for Ukraine's territorial integrity. Black Sea security is also expected to feature prominently in Fidan's wider discussions with senior Ukrainian officials. The visit comes amid continuing international efforts to establish a framework for future security guarantees for Ukraine and prevent further escalation of the conflict. Fidan's scheduled program also includes a meeting with President Zelensky, as well as talks with other top Ukrainian officials and representatives of the Crimean Tatar community. The visit underscores Ankara's continuing effort to position itself as a central diplomatic player in any future negotiations aimed at bringing Europe's prolonged war to an end. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Russia is considering new digital tracking rules for long-term foreign residents, raising fresh concerns for millions of Central Asian migrant workers. Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Russia may soon require foreign nationals staying in the country for work or other long-term purposes to purchase a mobile phone equipped with a special electronic profile. According to Deputy Interior Minister Igor Zubov, the device would allow authorities to monitor people's movements, track changes in their places of residence, and send automatic reminders when visas, work permits, or other documents are about to expire. The proposal builds on a pilot program already operating in Moscow and the Moscow region. Since September last year, labor migrants from Uzbekistan and 8 other visa-free countries have been required to install the Amina mobile application, which shares geological data with Russia's Interior Ministry. According to the ministry, more than 139,000 foreign nationals have already been removed from the migration register after failing to transmit location data for more than 3 working days. The measure could have significant implications for Central Asia, whose citizens make up the largest share of Russia's migrant workforce. According to Russia's border service, 3.12 million entries into Russia were made by Uzbek citizens in 2025. Followed by 1.44 million from Tajikistan and 983,000 from Kyrgyzstan. Kazakhstan recorded the highest overall number of entries at 3.2 million, although many were for short-term travel rather than labor migration. In recent years, Russia has tightened migration controls through expanded digital registration systems and strict enforcement measures as the country continues to rely on foreign workforce to address labor shortages in sectors such as construction, logistics, and manufacturing. The latest proposal would further expand the country's use of digital technologies in the migration management if approved by lawmakers. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Turkmenistan and Georgia are seeking closer transport and trade ties with the Middle Corridor and the planned Anaklia port at the centre of high-level talks in Tbilisi. Nini Nikolashvili has the latest.
President Serdar Berdimuhamedov was received at Tbilisi International Airport by Vice Prime Minister and Defense Minister Irakli Chikovani before a formal welcoming ceremony at the Presidential Palace hosted by President Mikhail Kavalashvili. The two presidents then held a one-on-one meeting focused on bilateral cooperation and the regional agenda, with talks between Berdimuhamedov and Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze set for Friday alongside ministerial-level meetings. Separately, Georgia's government administration hosted a delegation of Turkmen deputy prime ministers and the country's trade minister, with talks centered on the Middle Corridor, the Trans-Caspian route linking China and Central Asia to Europe through the Caspian Sea, the South Caucasus and Turkey. The Georgian side highlighted ongoing investment in the corridor's western leg, including the planned Anaklia deep-sea port, as both countries look to translate political dialogue into concrete transport and trade links. President Kavalashvili said Georgia's transit position, Black Sea access, and Anaklia's development could open new avenues for cooperation in transport, energy, and the digital economy, adding that he thanked Berdimuhamedov for supporting Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The visit follows Georgia's strategic partnership agreements with Kazakhstan in June and Uzbekistan in July, part of a broader effort by Tbilisi to anchor itself as the corridor's western gateway. Nini Nikolashvili, Batumi, A News.
Kazakhstan and China have signed more than 70 agreements worth over $15 billion, deepening cooperation in technology, transport, investment and industry. Fariza Kalamazina has more from Almaty.
More than 70 commercial agreements valued at over $15 billion have been signed during Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev's walking visit to China. The agreements cover technology, investment, transport and industrial cooperation. Speaking to executives from China's leading companies in Shanghai, Tokayev said Kazakhstan is entering what he described as a new golden 30 years of cooperation with China. Economic ties between the two countries continue to grow. Bilateral trade reached a record $49 billion last year, while Chinese investment in Kazakhstan has exceeded $30 billion. More than 8,500 companies with Chinese capital are now operating in the country. Tokayev said Kazakhstan is looking beyond attracting investment with a focus on joint technology development, research centers, advanced manufacturing, and building a skilled workforce to support the knowledge-based economy. He also invited Chinese companies to take part in projects involving artificial intelligence, data centers, digital logistics, and smart cities. Another focus is the digitalization of transport corridors linking China and Europe. Around 85% of rail freight between China and Europe passes through Kazakhstan, while the country has invested more than $35 billion in transport infrastructure. Tokayev said the next step is to speed up cross-border trade through digital technologies. One of the initiatives is the smart cargo platform designed to integrate customs, logistics, and commercial services into a single digital system. Cooperation on critical minerals was also on the agenda. Kazakhstan says it wants to work with international partners not only on mining strategic minerals, but also on expanding domestic processing to create higher value-added industries. Tokayev's visit continues on July 17th with the World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, where international cooperation on AI will be one of the main topics. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
After the break, we'll take a look at more top stories making the headlines. Don't go away.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. The United States and Iran continue to trade strikes, with American military bases across the Gulf coming under fire. Well, Tehran calls the Strait of Hormuz a red line, but says it seeks no confrontation with neighboring countries, while Washington vows to continue operations targeting Iranian activity in the waterway.
The United States launched 2 waves of strikes against Iranian coastal defences, missile sites and military infrastructure on Wednesday, saying the attacks were aimed at weakening Iran's ability to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. US Central Command said the operation targeted command centres, air defence systems, drone capabilities and Revolutionary Guards facilities, including around Bandar Abbas and Greater Tumb Island. Speaking during a defense event in Pennsylvania, President Donald Trump said the campaign was achieving its objectives.
We're doing really well with Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran is not happy right now. Should have been done 47 years ago. Should have been done at least during the 47-year period. And it wasn't. Other presidents didn't do what was right. They should have done it a long time ago. It would have been much easier. And they want to settle so badly. They don't like what we're doing. And they do want to settle. We'll find out whether or not we settle with them or we just finish it off.
Iran responded by launching missiles and drones at US military sites in Bahrain, Kuwait and Jordan. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it had targeted American personnel and military infrastructure, while Iranian media reported explosions in several cities and the activation of air defenses around Tehran. Asked about President Trump's recent remarks and threats against Iran, President Masoud Pezeshkian said the country would continue defending its territory.
The people who decided to divide our Iran into pieces, in the end, where are they standing now? We, in action, will defend every inch of our soil, and these disrespectful comments are worthy of them, not us.
The latest escalation follows Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend, disrupting one of the world's busiest energy routes. Despite the continuing hostilities, President Trump said Iran had allowed an American citizen detained since 2024 to leave the country, describing the move as a gesture of goodwill.
French lawmakers have backed assisted dying for terminally ill adults, setting strict conditions while reigniting debate over dignity, protection and palliative care.
France's National Assembly has approved a bill creating a legal right to assisted dying for some adults with incurable illnesses. Lawmakers passed the legislation on Wednesday by 291 votes to 241 after years of political and ethical debate. President Emmanuel Macron said the issue required careful discussion because it concerned life, suffering and dignity. The bill would allow eligible adults with terminal illnesses causing unbearable physical suffering to request a lethal substance. It could be self-administered or, if the patient is physically unable, given with the help of a doctor or nurse. Patients would still have to meet strict medical and legal conditions. Psychological suffering alone would not qualify.
We are speaking of women and men condemned by illness. We are speaking of patients whose suffering has become unbearable. We are speaking of people who know they are going to die. This text represents a right. It represents a choice. A right for the patient, a choice for the healthcare professional. It represents a freedom. It allows us to put an end to injustices.
The vote also drew protests outside Parliament. Opponents argue that legalising assisted dying risks normalising euthanasia and could put pressure on vulnerable or seriously ill people to end their lives. They say France should instead expand access to palliative care and pain relief for terminally ill patients.
I hold all those who are suffering in my prayers, or at least in my heart, and I believe that death will never be the solution. It is the wrong solution. While it may be the quickest and the quietest, it will never be the right one. We really need to expand palliative care. In fact, I consider this to be immoral and, frankly, unhealthy. As beings created for life, can we really inflict death?
The legislation still requires a final review by France's Constitutional Council before it can take effect. If approved, France would join countries including Belgium, the Netherlands and Spain in allowing assisted dying under strict conditions.
11 people, including children, have been killed in a fire at an orphanage in Algeria. 19 others were injured in the blaze near the capital, Algiers. Well, the fire broke out at the orphanage in the Mohammedia district early on Thursday as residents and emergency crews rushed to the scene. Well, 10 of the injured suffered burns, while 5 people with disabilities were evacuated to safety. Authorities have not released details about the victims or the cause of the fire. The Algerian president expressed his condolences following the tragedy. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa in Baku on Thursday. Well, the two leaders discussed bilateral ties, with President Aliyev reaffirming Azerbaijan's support for an independent Palestinian state, with East Jerusalem as its capital. Mr. Mustafa thanked Azerbaijan for its humanitarian assistance, including plans to build a secondary school, financial aid and support through the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. Well, the meeting also focused on expanding cooperation in education, diplomacy and trade. Global oil prices have dipped slightly, with continued fluctuations keeping investors on alert. Well, the latest market movements reflect continued uncertainty over the global supply outlook. Here's more.
Oil prices eased slightly on Thursday after 4 consecutive days of gains, as traders paused to assess the latest developments affecting global energy supplies. Brent crude fell 0.28% to $84.95 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate slipped 0.19% to $79.45. Despite the decline, both benchmarks remain close to one-month highs. Analysts say geopolitical tensions continue to support prices, but investors are now waiting to see whether they lead to any significant disruption to oil supplies. Goldman Sachs says Brent crude could rise above $110 a barrel later this year if exports remain restricted. However, it says prices could fall sharply if tensions ease and oil production recovers more quickly than expected. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's busiest energy shipping routes, remains under close watch. Before the conflict, it carried around 20% of global oil and liquefied natural gas trade. Shipping traffic through the waterway also slowed, with 7 vessels passing through on Wednesday, down from 13 the previous day, following the reimposition of a US naval blockade on Iran.
Well, that is all for Primetime for this evening. Andy Mioch will be with you tomorrow, bringing you plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.